Essos. Essos is an immense landmass located to the east of Westeros, extending into the far east of the known world. The free cities are located on its northwestern shores, with the Dothraki Sea located deep in the continental interior and the cities of Slavers Bay on the south coast. The continent extends far to the east, around the Jade Sea, to the distant and fabled lands of Asshai and the Shadow. Essos' climate is temperate in the northern and western portions, and subtropical in the southern and eastern portions. Rainfall generally decreases as one moves eastward in Essos. The extreme eastern end of the continent has not been fully mapped. Westeros's landmass is much longer from north to south, extending from the deserts of Dorne to the polar regions north of the Wall, but east to west travel is much shorter. In contrast, the greater bulk of Essos runs along an east-west latitude, while its northern and southern extremes are a shorter distance. On the western shore of Essos, the furthest point north at Braavos is at the same latitude as the Vale of Arryn, and the furthest point south near Tyrosh is at the same latitude as Dorne, separated only by the island chain known as the Stepstones. Pentos, located roughly between these two extremes, is at the same latitude as King's Landing. People or things from Essos are referred to as Essosi. Regions. The Free Cities. The 9 free cities are former colonies of the Valyrian freehold before its fall, except for Braavos, which was founded by refugees fleeing slavery in Valyria. The free cities are the westernmost part of Essos, and thus the closest part of the continent to Westeros, located on the other side of the narrow sea. Braavos, Loreth, Lys, Myr, Norvos, Pentos, Qohor, Tyrosh, Volantis. Each is now an independent city-state, competing amongst themselves for land and resources and forming various shifting alliances. They are located on the westernmost portion of Essos, separated from Westeros by the narrow sea, and are in frequent contact with the Seven Kingdoms, conducting brisk trade with them. In general, the western region of Essos containing the free cities is dominated by rugged hills in the north, which give way to rolling plains as one proceeds further south. Chief among these are the hills of Norvos located in the center-north of the western region. The only major forest in this region is the vast forest of Qohor, located east of the hills of Norvos and bordering the plains of the Dothraki Sea. Essos, often simply called the East, is the largest of the 4 known continents in the world. It lies east of Westeros and north of Sithorios and Ulthos, stretching from the Shivering Sea in the north to the Summer Sea in the south, and from the Narrow Sea in the west to the land surrounding the Jade Sea in the east, if not farther. Essos is populated by many different peoples and has a vast and varied geography. In the novels of A Song of Ice and Fire, the continent is simply called the Eastern Continent, beyond the Narrow Sea, or the East. George R.R. Martin first referred to it as Essos in mid-2008 in an interview, and later officially confirmed it. The appendix of A Dance with Dragons officially refers to the continent east of the Narrow Sea as Essos. The free cities are 9 independent city-states located on the western coast of Essos. 7 of the cities are coastal: Braavos, Myr, Pentos and Volantis, or island ports, Loreth, Lys and Tyrosh, lying on the narrow sea, whilst 2 others, Norvos and Qohor, are located inland. Except for Braavos, which was founded by refugee slaves, these cities are former colonies of the destroyed Valyrian freehold. As such, they retain elements of its culture. They are more developed and mercantile than the cities of Westeros, even King's Landing. Each of the free cities controls a certain amount of territory surrounding it, including smaller towns and villages. The region of the free cities extends from the western coastline to the forest of Qohor and the mighty river Roine in the east, which separate them from the Dothraki Sea and the kingdom of Sarnar. In the northwestern corner of this region, between Braavos and Pentos, are the hills of Andalos, the ancient homeland of the Undulls and, according to legends, the source of the faith of the Seven. Geography. Essos is considerably larger than Westeros, though its true extent is unknown as no map of the entire continent currently exists. The north coast of the mainland is separated from the polar cap by the Shivering Sea. To the south, across the Summer Sea, lies the uncharted continent of Sithorios. In the extreme east, across the Jade Sea, sit Asshai, et, and the mysterious region called the Shadowlands. South of the Shadowlands is the continent of Ulthos. The geography and climate of Essos varies greatly. Being separated from the polar cap of the land of always winter and located farther to the south, it is affected by winters to a lesser extent than Westeros. The western coastline appears to be temperate in the north, becoming drier and hotter to the south, and is characterized by green rolling hills, the massive forest of Qohor, and extensive island chains such as Braavos and Lys. The middle of the continent is covered by the flat grasslands plains of the Dothraki Sea and, to the east, the arid wasteland of red sand known as the Red Waste, where nothing grows. Beyond this desert, the city of Qarth sits beside the Jade Gates that lead to the Jade Sea. The south is dominated by dry rolling hills and has a Mediterranean climate with a coastline along the Summer Sea connecting Volantis with the Valyria Peninsula and the great inlet known as Slaver's Bay. Essos is dominated by the Bone Mountains and the Krasaj Zaska, longitudinal mountain ranges separating the western half more familiar to the Westerosi and an exotic eastern half of which less is known. The Rhoyne River. The western region is dominated by the watershed of the Rhoyne River and its many tributaries, which begin in these hills and flow more or less from the northwest to the southeast, where the Rhoyne's massive river delta empties into the Summer Sea near the port of Volantis. The river-based merchant states of the Rhoyner people used to thrive along its waters, but 1,000 years ago the Rhoyner were defeated by the expanding Valyrians, and the survivors fled to Dorne in Westeros. The ruins of some of their cities can still be seen along the Rhoyne's shores. The Rhoyne River stretches all the way to its origin in the northwest, not far from Braavos, where the Upper Rhoyne and Little Rhoyne converge near the ruins of Goyandro. Further east it is joined by its tributary the River Noin, flowing from the hills of Norvos, at the ruins of New York Sar. Further southeast it is joined by the River Coin, flowing from the forest of Qohor, and their confluence results in a body of water known as Dagger Lake, at latitude between Pentos and Myr. Thus, even the inland free cities of Norvos and Qohor and capable of maritime travel and trade, shipping their goods down the river system. The Rhoyne River then drains out of Dagger Lake and as it proceeds south is fed by several other tributaries such as the Lorelou, coming from the west in the Golden Fields, and then the Selhoru and Valina, both coming from the east. The result of the convergence of these last tributaries into the already swollen lower Rhoyne is that the area east of the southern third or so of the Rhoyne is covered in disease-ridden and generally impassable marshes and swamps. In contrast, the western side of the Rhoyne Delta, located between Lys and Volantis, is much more dry and pleasant, a region known as the Orange Shores. As one proceeds north to south along the western coast of Essos, from Braavos to Tyrosh, the continent can be divided into roughly 3 regions west of the Rhoyne River, the hills of Andalos, then the flatlands, and furthest to the south the disputed lands, between Myr and Lys. The hills of Andalos, mostly separated from the hills of Norvos by the Upper Rhoyne and Lorith Bay, is where the people known as the Undulls originated before they left to conquer Westeros thousands of years ago. Extending north from this region, in the northwest corner of the continent, is the Braavos Peninsula. Today, the peninsula and Andalos are more or less controlled by Braavos, leading to it often being called the Bravosian coastland. South of Andalos, separated from it by the Little Rhoyne and the Velvet Hills, are the flatlands. This division happens at roughly the same latitude of nearby Pentos. As their name suggests, they are a region of flat farmlands. The northern extreme of the flatlands starts east of Pentos, is bounded on the east by the course of the Rhoyne River, and has a southern extreme more or less around the latitude of Myr, and that city's bay known as the Sea of Myrth. South of the flatlands and the Sea of Myrth are a less well-defined region known as the Disputed Lands. They are so called because different portions of them are constantly changing hands between the free cities of Lys and Myr, which have been bitter rivals for centuries. Tyrosh, which is located at the western extreme of the peninsula formed by the Disputed Lands, and Volantis to the east, also often get dragged into these internecine conflicts between the two archenemies. Tyroshi itself is the closest of the free cities to Westeros, separated from them by a chain of islands known as the Stepstones, which according to legend once formed a land bridge to Westeros known as the Arm of Dorne, before it was broken. In any case, the Stepstones are also heavily contested but rarely controlled by one party for long, and they are infamous as pirate dens. Nonetheless, nearby Tyrosh is more often than not in control of those islands closest to itself. While Myr is located on the mainlands on the eastern shore of the Bay of Myrth to the north of the Disputed Lands, Lys is actually located on a chain of islands off the southern shore of the peninsula. As one proceeds west to east from Braavos, along the shores of the Shivering Sea, the hills of Andalos are separated by the Upper Rhoyne and Lorith Bay from the sprawling hills of Norvos, which cover a large area. The free city of Lorith is located on an island in this bay. The city of Norvos is located within these hills and along the River Noin, which flows south into the Rhoyne, and thus does not have a large port on the Shivering Sea. East of Norvos is a peninsula on the north coast known as the Axe, which contains several important mines operated by Norvos. East of the hills of Norvos are the large forest of Qohor, which contains the free city of Qohor, famed for its skilled metalsmiths. Located at the eastern edge of the Roin's watershed, Qohor is located closest to the Dothraki Sea and is under frequent threat by Dothraki raiders. South of the forest the trees give way to some brief plains which allow the Dothraki clear access to the banks of the Roin itself. However, south of these plains the land quickly turns into the massive swamps that are located north/northeast of Volantis, formed by tributaries such as the Selhorub. Valyrian Peninsula. The ancient empire known as the Valyrian Freehold was founded on a peninsula of land located southeast of the current location of the Free Cities, which were founded as colonies from Valyria. The basis of the Valyrians' power were the mighty dragons which they found in a chain of volcanoes on their peninsula, then tamed to ride as weapons of war. The Valyrian Peninsula is located between the Free Cities to the northwest and Slavers Bay to the east. Travelers between these two regions have to sail around the peninsula. Some 400 years ago, an event known as the Doom of Valyria, possibly a chain of volcanic eruptions, shattered the Valyrian Empire, and the Valyrian Peninsula itself was broken into a chain of islands. Known as the Smoking Sea, sailors are still afraid to travel there after all of these centuries. The ruins of the ancient city of Valyria are both a wonder and a terror, and for the most part rot unplundered, as few men who actually venture there ever return. The legacy of the Valyrians lives on in their colonies, which over the centuries turned into the independent free cities. The first 100 years after the Doom of Valyria were a mad free-for-all known as the Bleeding Years, in which different colonies tried to unify or conquer all of the others to rebuild the Valyrian Empire, while others tried to assert their independence. Valyria's oldest and largest colony was Volantis, which is located on the border between the watershed of the River Roin, and where the coast veers south to form the Valyrian Peninsula. Volantis succeeded in conquering Lys and Myr and was also attempting to absorb Tyrosh. The last true scion of the Valyrian Empire was located on distant Dragonstone Island, off the coast of Westeros, where House Targaryen, a family of Valyrian nobles, possessed the only dragons to survive the Doom. Volantis begged the Targaryens to assist them in rebuilding the Valyrian Empire, but they refused, instead choosing to prepare to go west to conquer and forge a new realm in Westeros. Tyrosh was joined by Pentos, as well as rebellions in Lys and Myr, and material support from Braavos. Even the Stormlands of Westeros, under the independent Storm Kings, sent aid. Lys and Myr were liberated and Volantis' power was checked. However, the alliance soon fell apart and Lys and Myr have remained intractable enemies ever since. Volantis remains one of the more powerful of the free cities, but for the past 300 years has focused on trade, while Braavos rose to become the most powerful overall. The Valyrian Peninsula is a large headland extending south from Essos into the Summer Sea. Once the heartland of the Valyrian Freehold and the location of the city of Valyria, it was partially destroyed in the Doom of Valyria, during which many islands formed, low-lying areas flooded, and Valyria fell into ruin. The peninsula and the smoking sea that surround its remnants are considered to be demon-haunted and rife with poisonous fumes. With few exceptions, those who travel there seeking the ruins of Valyria or its treasures never return. Slavers Bay. East of the Valyrian Peninsula, as one follows the coast of the Summer Sea west to east, there is a large gulf known as the Gulf of Grief, which extends further north into a bay known as Slavers Bay. The people of the cities of Slavers Bay, on its eastern coast, are descendants of Valyria's old rival Guise. When the Valyrian Empire was first expanding, Guise was the only major power that stood in its way, but after a series of wars the Giscari could not withstand the dragons of Valyria, and they were conquered. Today, the three major cities of Slavers Bay are, from north to south, Meereen, Yunkai, and Astapor. Their inhabitants are predominantly descendants of Guise, just as the people of the free cities are mostly descended from Valyria, though over hundreds of years both groups have intermarried with local peoples. The city of Old Guise itself is in ruins. Slavers Bay is south of the Dothraki Sea, from which is separated by a chain of mountains that run northwest to southeast, though there are passes in the mountains such as the Kaizai Pass. The mountains also separate Slavers Bay from the Red Waste further to the southeast. A major river, the Shahazadin, flows through the mountains into the sea, past Meereen in the north which is built along its banks. The river extends through the mountains and into the interior, through the Kaizai Pass into Laser. The area was formerly known as Slavers Bay, which was a major hub for the international slave trade, and often raided the continent of Sithorios which is located nearby, south across the Summer Sea. Daenerys Targaryen recently launched a military campaign in the region, taking Astapor and Yunkai, then capturing Meereen and setting herself up as the city's queen. Daenerys was determined to end slavery and abolished it in Meereen. However, as soon as her army left, Astapor and Yunkai fell out of her control, and eventually were reconquered by the slavers. When the slavers attempted to invade Meereen to overthrow Daenerys, they were quickly defeated by Daenerys, her dragons, her Unsullied, and her Dothraki. As Daenerys left the city to return to Westeros, she changed the name of the region from Slavers Bay to the Bay of Dragons, to reflect that slavery had come to an end once and for all. South of the Dothraki Sea, east of Valyria, and west of Lazer are Slavers Bay and Giskar. The region holds many small city-states and the three great slaver port cities of Yunkai, Meereen, and Astapor. The cities were built from the rubble of Old Guys and the Giskari Empire, an ancient rival of the Valyrian freehold which crushed and superseded it thousands of years ago. The slaver cities are still connected to the free cities by the Valyrian road network. The city of New Guys sits on an island south of Giskar, but the novels reveal little about it. The Skahazadan is the largest river of the region. Dothraki Sea. The plains of the Dothraki Sea are the vast grasslands of the interior of Essos, a sea of grass, which stretches for miles upon miles. It is inhabited by a fierce race of nomadic horse-mounted warriors known as the Dothraki. The one permanent settlement of the Dothraki is their city of Ves Dothrak, located in the shadow of an isolated mountain known as the Mother of Mountains. The Dothraki Sea is vast, and borders many other regions of Essos. It is east of the Free Cities, beginning east of the forest of Qohor in the north, and in the south, it is northeast of the swamps that are between Volantis and the Valyrian Peninsula. Slavers Bay is directly south of much of the Dothraki Sea. The eastern border of the Dothraki Sea is unknown, as it forms the eastern end of the explored regions of Essos itself. East of the Free Cities and Sarnar, the vast grassland plain known as the Dothraki Sea covers much of inland Essos. It is inhabited by the Dothraki people, a copper-skinned race of warlike nomads with their own language and unique equestrian culture. While the Dothraki do not trade, their slave raids are a driving force of Essos' economy. There are numerous ruined cities of older cultures in and near the Dothraki Sea. Lazer. Slavers Bay is shielded from the Dothraki Sea by a series of coastal mountains to their northeast. As the southeastern Dothraki Sea reaches near the mountains, it gives way to a hill country that is unsuitable for horse herds, but which is quite suitable for sheep pastures. This hill country is linked to Slavers Bay by the Kaizai Pass through the coastal mountains, formed by the Shahadazan River. The upper Shahadazan, on the interior side of the mountains facing the Dothraki Sea, is thus well watered enough for basic agriculture. This hill country is known as Lazer, and its inhabitants are peaceful shepherds. Due to their non-martial culture, they are a favored target of the Dothraki when they are looking for slaves, though they have little in the way of wealth for plunder. Lazer is located southeast of the Dothraki Sea and northeast of Slavers Bay. It is a semi-arid land of pastures and hills. The horse lords consider the Lazarene, its shepherding people, easy targets and good slaves, calling them Hayshraki, lamb men. The Red Waste. The Red Waste is a series of harsh deserts, southeast of the Dothraki Sea and east of the Bay of Dragons coastal mountains. Eventually, even the grass plains of the Dothraki Sea reach too far away from bodies of water for anything to grow, resulting in these deserts. There are some ruined or lost cities in the Red Waste, which were once able to flourish using large irrigation works, but with their people gone and the irrigation abandoned, they have been reclaimed by the sands. The Red Waste forms a massive barrier against east-west land travel, particularly between Slavers Bay and Qarth to the east. As a result, these areas rely exclusively on long-distance maritime trade. Qarth. Qarth is a great trading hub east of Slavers Bay, south of the Red Waste, on the coast of the Jade Sea. Located on the Straits of Qarth, it is the natural center of much of the east-west and north-south trade in the world. Qarth is the furthest east that men from Westeros have had trade contact with, though it is not as frequent as the trade with the nearby free cities. Thus, Qarth is considered very exotic to people from Westeros, filled with exotic trade items and spices. Asshai, the Jade Sea, and lands of the Far East. The areas east of Qarth and the Jade Sea are not well known to the inhabitants of Westeros, and do not appear on their maps. Semi-legendary locations such as the city of Et have been heard of, and people from these eastern lands sometimes travel further west, but they are almost never seen in Westeros itself. Chief among these mysterious lands surrounded in half-legends is the land of Asshai, which borders the even more exotic Shadowlands. Asshai is rumored to be filled with warlocks and magic priestesses, possessing various arcane knowledge. The large island of Ib is located off the far northeastern shore of Essos, in the polar waters of the Shivering Sea. It is located very far from the rest of Essos but is far too small, about the size of real-life Iceland, to be considered a continent in its own right, so it is often loosely considered part of Essos. It is at roughly the same longitude as V's Dothraki and Karth. Despite these vast distances, the whale hunting, Inuit-like Ibbenese travel very far across the world oceans, trading across much of Essos and sometimes in Westeros as well. Karth is an ancient city in the distant east, beyond the Red Waste, on the shores of the Jade Sea. It is home to warlocks and merchant princes. Its position at the Jade Gates makes it the gateway of commerce and culture between the east and west, such as the Free Cities and Slavers Bay, and more eastern lands, such as Asshai, the Shadowlands, and Et. Brimming with wealth, and priding themselves on their sophistication, the Kartheen engage in unending intrigue between the many powerful factions of their society. South of Karth is the large island Great Moruk, located between the Summer Sea and the Jade Sea. People. Essos is home to a much larger and more diverse set of races and cultures than Westeros. They are descendants of old cultures ranging from the Undulls, the Rhoynar, Old Guys, and Valyrian Freehold. Unlike Westeros, which is unified under the Seven Kingdoms, Essos is divided into many different sovereign regions and city-states and has had no dominant power since the Valyrian Freehold fell almost 4 centuries ago. Its peoples include Dothraki, a copper-skinned race of warlike nomads with their own language and unique culture. Giscari, a mongrel race that populates most of Slavers Bay, that speak a bastardized version of High Valyrian. Descendants of Old Guys. Peoples of the Free Cities, descendants of the Valyrian Freehold and their slaves. They speak a distinct form of High Valyrian, though the common tongue of Westeros is also used. Lazarene, a peaceful people with bronze skin, flat faces, and almond eyes. They are predominantly shepherds who worship the Great Shepherd and are called the Lamb Men by the Dothraki, who frequently prey on them. Kartheen, the inhabitants of Karth. Ibbenese fishing colonies in the north. Jogos Nai, renowned for capturing Zorses. Engai, kin to the more nomadic Jogos Nai, the inhabitants of Nefer the Secret City. Sarnori, or Tegisfan meaning, tall men, the brown-skinned, black-haired people of Sarnor, whose last survivors occupy Soth. Yiddish, the bright-eyed people of the Golden Empire of Et, the oldest and largest civilization of Essos. Lengii, perhaps the tallest race, with teak-colored skin, golden eyes, long legs, slender build, inhabiting the island of Len. Vanquished or vanished cultures include the Jogwin, the Maze-makers, and the Ifaquevran. The Rhoynar largely fled the Rhoyne for Dorne in Westeros. In the books. In A Song of Ice and Fire, Essos is a vast continent, several times larger than Westeros. It is oriented further south and is separated from the northern polar ice cap by a body of water known as the Shivering Sea. It is divided into several regions. George R.R. Martin has said that Westeros is loosely analogous to an oversized British Isles, as big as an entire continent, roughly as large as South America. Meanwhile, Martin has said that Essos is loosely analogous to Eurasia. The Free Cities are somewhat like the medieval Italian city-states, the Dothraki are loosely similar to various mounted nomads of the Central Asian steppe, etc. Because Essos is so large, the name Essos itself is relatively little used in the narrative. It makes more sense for a character to specify, in the Free Cities, or, in the Dothraki Sea. Saying, I am going to Essos, is very vague, somewhat like saying, I am going to Eurasia, which could mean anywhere from the Free Cities, Italy, to the Dothraki Sea, Outer Mongolia. The name Essos does appear on maps, but even then, it is more common for characters to generally say, in the east, the eastern continent, or, beyond the narrow sea, to describe the landmass. Similarly, the name Essos has rarely appeared in dialogue from the TV series, though it does appear on maps. By Season 6, it has actually only been used in 4 episodes. In Season 2 Episode 5, The Ghost of Harrenhal, Doria remarks to Daenerys that Karth is the richest city in Essos, though TV viewers might not be able to tell from her brief comment that Essos is the name of the entire continent, not just a sub-region. The second use of the name was in Season 4 Episode 6, The Laws of Gods and Men, in which Oberyn Martell discusses at some length that he has spent time traveling in Essos. His dialogue in that episode, including his conversation with Varys, who is originally from the Free Cities, makes it more clear that Essos is the name of the entire eastern continent. Tyrion also refers to it as Essos in Season 5 Episode 4, Sons of the Harpy. Arya Stark refers to it by name as well in Season 6's No One. The HBO version of Essos is based on early drafts provided by George R.R. Martin. However, after providing these drafts, Martin radically changed his mind about the outline and shape of Essos east of Slaver's Bay. This new version of the continent forms the basis for the Maps in the Lands of Ice and Fire, a companion set of maps for the novels, released in October 2012. This version, which is canon for the novels, but not the TV series, has numerous changes. Most notable is the moving of the Jade Sea from a huge, semi-enclosed bay of Essos to a sea running south of the continent, separated from the Summer Sea by an island called Great Morrock. The Straits of Qarth, aka Jade Gates, now separate Essos from Great Morrock, with Qarth located on those straits. The south coast of Great Morrock is divided from the continent of Sithorios by the Cinnamon Straits. Et is a jungle kingdom not far to the east, and Asshai somewhat further to the southeast, located on the end of a mountainous peninsula. A huge mountain range running the entire height of the continent, the Bone Mountains, now separates the Dothraki Sea from the lands of the Jogos nigh beyond. Far beyond Asshai, in the furthest east, is the strange city of Carcosa, ruled by its Yellow King. According to the TV series official pronunciation guide developed for the cast and crew, Essos is pronounced Essos. If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.